Chicago's Christmas Eve felt like the end of the world. In the narrow alley behind Murphy's Tavern, where the wind cut through brick walls like broken glass, Connor Williams pressed his back against the cold stone. His breath came in sharp, desperate puffs that disappeared into the frozen darkness. The 16-year-old's flannel shirt, torn at the shoulder from his father's grip, offered no protection against the bitter lake wind. His sketchbook, water-damaged and precious, clutched against his chest like armor that couldn't shield him from what had just happened. Frank Williams swayed 3 feet away, the half-empty whiskey bottle swinging from his calloused hand like a pendulum, marking time until something broke. The smell of cheap bourbon and factory grease radiated from him, and, mixing with the stench of the alley, Connor's left cheekbone throbbed where Frank's wedding ring had connected, the metal leaving its mark like a brand. His father's eyes, bloodshot and wild, held no recognition of the boy he'd once taught to throw a baseball. Frank stepped closer, his boots crunching on ice-crusted snow. His voice came out in a slur that made each word a weapon. "You want to be something you're not, Connor. You want to embarrass this family with your sickness." Connor's voice cracked like thin ice. "Dad, please, it's Christmas Eve. Can we just go home?" Home, Frank's laugh was sharp, grating, empty of anything resembling love. "You don't have a home. Not with me. Not anymore. I'm done looking at what you've become." The shove came fast and brutal. Connor's feet slipped on the slush, sending him sprawling against a dumpster. His sketchbook skittered across the ice, pages fluttering like dying birds. Before Connor could scramble up, Frank turned toward the street. His silhouette wavered against the neon glow of the tavern sign. "Dad." Connor's voice broke on the words. "Please don't leave me here." Frank paused. For one desperate moment, Connor thought his father might turn around, might remember who they used to be to each other. But Frank only straightened his shoulders and disappeared around the corner, leaving his son alone in the brutal Chicago winter. Connor crawled toward his sketchbook, his fingers numb and clumsy. He pulled his knees to his chest, wrapping his arms around them, trying to make himself small enough to disappear. The alley fell silent, except for the distant hum of Christmas music from Murphy's and the relentless whisper of wind through the narrow space. Connor closed his eyes and tried to remember warmth, tried to remember a time when Frank had looked at him with pride instead of disgust. Christmas Eve in Chicago had become the night Connor learned that love could freeze to death, and that sometimes the people who were supposed to protect you were the ones who left you out in the cold. What happens when the family that should love you becomes the danger you need to escape? Connor's story is just beginning. And what comes next will challenge everything you think you know about family, survival, and the unexpected places love can be found. Don't forget to subscribe to Heart Stories for many more stories of resilience, hope, and deep courage when everything falls apart. 2 blocks away, Dr. Marcus Thorne walked through falling snow. At 45, he was Chicago's most respected cardiac surgeon, hands that never trembled and reputation cold as December wind. St. Regis Tower penthouse was his destination, where aged Scotch and medical journals waited. Marcus had built his life around predictable patterns since David's death 3 years ago. Work, sleep, work. Safer than feeling. He took the shortcut past the alley to avoid Christmas crowds. That was when he heard it. Not quite a cry, more like something breaking quietly. A ragged, hitching gasp that sounded frighteningly young. Marcus stopped. Every instinct told him to keep walking. This was Chicago. People made noises in alleys, but the sound came again. A desperate whisper that cut through wind and found something he thought buried with David. "Is someone there?" His voice carried authority. In dim light, he saw the huddled figure against the dumpster. A boy, maybe 16, shaking so violently his teeth chattered. Marcus stepped closer, expensive shoes crunching on ice. The kid's hair was matted with wet snow, and a dark bruise bloomed across his pale cheekbone. But it was the eyes that stopped Marcus cold. Wide, terrified, holding the same defeated exhaustion he had seen in David's face. "Please," the boy whispered, shielding his face. I don't have any money. The gesture was practiced, and Marcus felt something crack in his defenses. This wasn't a vagrant. This was a child who had learned to expect violence. I don't want your money, Marcus said, voice dropping to the gentle tone he used with frightened patience. You're freezing. The boy tried to respond, but his lips were too numb. Can't. Legs numb. Marcus knelt in slush without hesitation, ruining his tailored trousers. Medical training kicked in. Severe hypothermia. Possible frostbite. Signs of trauma. He stripped off his heavy coat and draped it over the boy's shoulders. My name is Marcus. I'm a doctor. I'm going to help you. The boy looked at him through chattering teeth, confusion and hope warring in his expression. Why, because you're dying out here. The boy's hand was ice cold when Marcus helped him stand. He swayed against Marcus's steadiness, and for a moment the surgeon was transported back to holding David during his weakest moments. My book, the boy rasped, looking at the soggy sketchbook in slush. Marcus retrieved it, tucking it into his coat pocket. Art, he noted. Another connection to David, who had been a sculptor before cancer. Come on. My car is around the corner. As they walked slowly through snow, Marcus felt something shifting inside him. The iron control he had maintained for 3 years was developing cracks. The drive to his penthouse was quiet except for the boy's slowing shivers. Marcus found himself stealing glances at his passenger, noting the torn flannel shirt, bruising that spoke of repeated violence. The elevator opened directly into Marcus's penthouse, revealing space that was beautiful, expensive, and empty of warmth. Floor-to-ceiling windows showcased glittering Chicago skyline, the home of someone who had forgotten how to live. Shoes off, Marcus said gently. The heated floors are marble. While the boy stood uncertainly, Marcus moved to the kitchen. Heating soup, he placed a steaming bowl before his guest. What's your name, Connor? The boy whispered. Connor Williams. And your father did that to your face, Connor froze. Marcus had seen enough trauma to recognize the signs. He gets angry when he drinks, Connor admitted quietly. He gets angry when he looks at me. Because you're gay, Marcus asked. Connor's head snapped up, fear flashing. How did you know? Takes one to know one, Marcus said quietly. I was kicked out at 17. I know the look. Connor slumped, tension draining out of him. He left me there. He said he was done. Marcus's jaw tightened. Even if he came back, he wouldn't get past the lobby. Marcus set up the guest room, pulling fresh linens. We'll figure out the rest tomorrow, he said. Connor stood in the doorway, clutching the frame. Why are you doing this? Marcus looked at the boy, broken but resilient, because no one should be alone on Christmas Eve. That night, Marcus didn't sleep. He sat in his study, researching laws on emergency guardianship. The image of Connor in the alley, wrapped in his gray coat, had seared itself into his mind. At 3 a.m, a cry echoed through the penthouse. Marcus found Connor thrashing in the guest bed. No, Dad, stop. Marcus sat on the edge and gripped Connor's shoulders. Connor, wake up. You're safe, Connor gasped, waking with a start. He looked around wildly before his eyes landed on Marcus. He collapsed forward, burying his face in Marcus's chest, sobbing. Marcus wrapped his arms around the boy. I've got you, he murmured. You're safe here. Sometimes healing begins not with medicine, but with someone choosing to see your worth when you can't see it yourself. The next morning was gray and solemn. Marcus took Connor to his private clinic before it opened, wanting everything documented. Dr. Sarah Jenkins, Marcus's colleague, performed the exam with motherly warmth that balanced Marcus's coolness. She cataloged the bruising, signs of malnutrition, and an older fracture in Connor's wrist that hadn't healed right. He's been enduring this for a long time, Sarah said quietly in the hallway. We have to call Child Protective Services. I know, Marcus said. I called a lawyer, Elena Russo. She's meeting us back at the apartment. I want to file for emergency fostering. I'm a certified emergency placement home. Got the certification years ago for a program I never followed through on. It's still valid. Sarah raised an eyebrow. You, the man who yells at interns for breathing too loud. Want a teenager? I don't want a teenager, Marcus said, looking through the glass where Connor was carefully buttoning his shirt. I want to help him. Back at the penthouse, the reality set in. Marcus Trent from CPS arrived, a weary man with kind eyes. He interviewed Connor gently. Connor, emboldened by Marcus's presence, told the truth about the drinking, the beatings, the slurs. We have enough for an immediate removal order, Marcus said, closing his notebook. Given Dr. Thorne's credentials and your lack of other relatives, I can approve a temporary placement here pending a hearing. But Connor, your father might fight this. Abusers are about control. I don't want to go back, Connor said, his voice trembling but firm. He looked at Marcus. I want to stay. Then you'll stay, Marcus said, placing a hand on Connor's shoulder. Over the next few weeks, the penthouse slowly changed. It wasn't just a sterile architectural showcase anymore. It became a home. Connor's sketchbook was always a meow-meow on the coffee table. The smell of baking, something Connor discovered he loved, replaced the smell of disinfectant. Marcus changed too. He left the hospital on time. He learned that Connor liked peppermint tea and was terrified of thunderstorms. He watched Connor sketch, amazed by the boy's talent. Connor drew the city, the skyline, and page after page of a figure in a long gray coat standing guard. One evening, Marcus came home to find Connor sitting on the floor, surrounded by colored pencils. What are you working on? Marcus asked, hanging up the gray coat, the same one Connor now wore whenever they went out on the balcony. Connor held up the drawing. It was the two of them. Marcus was tall and imposing like a fortress, and Connor was standing beside him, not cowering, but standing tall. It's us, Connor said shyly. You saved me. Marcus felt a lump in his throat. He sat down on the floor, disregarding his suit pants. You saved me too. Connor, it was very quiet in here before you, but the peace was fragile. Frank had been served with the restraining order and custody papers, and he didn't take it well. He began stalking the building. Security chased him off twice. On a Tuesday afternoon, Marcus took Connor to a bookstore downtown to buy art supplies. They were laughing, a sound that still felt new to Marcus, as they walked to the car. There you are, you little freak. The voice cut through the air like a knife. Frank stepped out from behind a pillar in the parking garage. He looked worse than before, hollow-eyed and manic. Connor froze, dropping his bag. Dad, don't call me that. Frank spat. You think you can just run away to some sugar daddy? He lunged forward, it. Marcus stepped in front of Connor instantly. He was not a brawler, but he stood with absolute confidence of a man who held lives in his hands every day. Back off, Marcus commanded, his voice ice cold. Move, fancy boy. Frank sneered, reaching for a tire iron in his belt. Security is already on the way, Marcus said, not flinching. Touch him and you will spend the next 10 years in a cell. Leave now, and it's only harassment. Frank hesitated, eyes darting between Marcus's steady glare and the security cameras. He looked at Connor, who was peering out from behind Marcus's gray coat. He'll get tired of you. Frank sneered at Connor. Everyone does. You're broken. He's not broken, Marcus said, his voice low and dangerous. He is worth 10 of you. Now get out. Sirens wailed in the distance. Frank cursed, spat on the ground, and ran. Marcus turned to Connor, checking him for injuries. Are you okay? Connor was shaking, but he looked up at Marcus with new intensity. You'd get tired of me. Marcus gripped Connor's shoulders. Look at me, ain't it? I am not going in anywhere. We are a family now. I don't abandon family. When we're rejected by those who should love us unconditionally, it can feel like we're fundamentally broken. But sometimes the most profound healing happens when someone sees past our wounds to our worth. Family isn't always about blood. Sometimes it's about choosing to stay when everyone else walks away. The court date arrived on a snowy morning in February. The courtroom was austere, smelling of floor wax and old wood. Elena Russo, Marcus's lawyer, was a shark in a silk blouse. She laid out the evidence methodically, the medical reports, the police records, the testimony from security guards. Frank's court-appointed lawyer tried to argue parental rights, claiming Frank was seeking treatment and that Marcus was a stranger with no blood relation. Then it was Connor's turn to speak. He walked to the stand wearing a suit Marcus had bought him. He looked at Frank, then at the judge. "My father," Connor began, his voice gaining strength, "taught me that I was a mistake. He taught me that love was something you had to earn by being someone else. He left me in an alley to freeze because he couldn't stand looking at me." He turned to look at Marcus, who was sitting at the defense table, stoic but watching Connor with intense pride. "Dr. Thorne, Adrian. He found me when I was nothing. He didn't ask me to change. He gave me his coat. He gave me a home. He listens when I talk. He looks at me like I matter." Connor took a deep breath. "I don't want to go back to being a mistake. I want to go home with Marcus." The judge, a stern man with glasses, looked at Frank, who was sulking in his chair, and then at Marcus and Connor. "Mr. Williams," the judge addressed Frank, "your actions on Christmas Eve were reprehensible. You have shown zero remorse and zero capability to parent." He banged the gavel. "Permanent guardianship is granted to Dr. Marcus Thorne. Mr. Williams is stripped of all parental rights." The relief in the courtroom was palpable. Connor let out a shriek and ran to Marcus. For the first time in public, Marcus hugged him back, holding him tight, resting his chin on the boy's head. "It's over," Marcus whispered. "Let's go home." That afternoon, Marcus sat Connor down in the living room. "There's something I need to tell you about David," he said quietly. "David was my partner. He died of cancer 3 years ago. I thought I'd never open my heart again. But you changed that." Connor was quiet for a long moment. "I'm sorry you lost him, but I'm glad you found room for me." Marcus smiled, a real genuine smile that reached his eyes. "You didn't just find room, Connor. You brought this place back to life." They ordered pizza that night and sat on the floor of the living room, sharing stories. Marcus told Connor about David's sculptures, about their plans to travel, about how grief had made him forget how to feel joy. Connor talked about his art, about dreams he'd never dared voice, about the terror of thinking he'd die unloved and alone. "You know what David would have said about you?" Marcus asked. Looking at one of Connor's drawings, he would have said, "You have the soul of an artist." That's what he called people who could create beauty even after they had been broken. Connor wiped his eyes. "Do you think he would have liked me?" Marcus looked at the boy who had brought light back into his darkness. "I know he would have loved you, just like I do." Outside, the snow fell gently over the city, but inside their penthouse, high above Chicago, it was warm. They had found something better than shelter from the storm. They had found each other. Sometimes the most beautiful families are born not from biology, but from the conscious choice to love someone exactly as they are. True healing often comes not from fixing what's broken, but from creating something entirely new together. Christmas morning, 1 year later, the penthouse was unrecognizable. There was a 10-foot tree in the corner, covered in lights and handmade ornaments. Stockings hung by the fireplace. One embroidered Marcus, the other Connor. Connor woke to the smell of cinnamon and coffee. He padded into the living room. He was 17 now, taller, filling out his frame. The haunted look in his eyes was gone, replaced by a creative spark that seemed to illuminate everything around him. "Merry Christmas," Marcus said, handing him a mug of hot chocolate. Marcus looked relaxed, wearing a cashmere sweater instead of a suit. The rigid control he'd maintained for years had softened into something warmer, more human. "Merry Christmas, Marcus." They exchanged gifts. Connor had painted a large canvas for Marcus, a portrait of the Chicago skyline at night, but with warmth glowing from their penthouse window. "It's incredible," Marcus said, genuinely moved. "We'll hang it in the foyer." "Open yours," Connor said. Bouncing on his heels with excitement Marcus hadn't seen since David's final good days. Marcus handed him a small, rectangular box and a larger portfolio case. Connor unwrapped the box first. Inside was a set of professional-grade art supplies and a heavy key on a silver chain. Connor looked up, confused. A key. It's the key to the studio downtown. Marcus said, I bought the loft space above the gallery on Michigan Avenue. It's yours, an art studio. You have a gift. Connor, you deserve the space to explore it. Connor's eyes filled with tears. He looked at the key, then at the man who had pulled him out of the snow and into a life he'd never dared dream possible. Thank you for everything. You don't have to thank me, Marcus said, smiling genuinely. You're my son, Connor, in every way that matters. Now open the portfolio. Inside were acceptance letters from 3 art schools, including the Art Institute of Chicago. I took the liberty of submitting your portfolio. Marcus said quietly, full scholarships to all 3. The choice is yours. Connor hugged him, the art supplies and key clutched in his hand. Outside, the snow fell gently over the city, covering the alleyways and streets in a blanket of white. But inside, high above the world in their penthouse, it was warm. They sat by the fire as the morning light filled the room. Connor sketched in his new pad while Marcus read his paper, occasionally glancing over to check on the boy who had become his whole world. The gray coat hung in the closet near the door, cleaned and pressed, no longer needed to keep out the cold. They had found something better to keep them warm. They had found each other. Marcus's phone buzzed with a text from David's sister. Thinking of you both today. David would be so proud. Marcus showed Connor the message. He's still with us, isn't he? Connor said softly. In here, Marcus said, touching at his heart. And in you. You brought his spirit back to this place. You brought everything back. Connor looked around their home, filled with light and laughter and the promise of tomorrow. In the quiet peace of the morning, he knew with absolute certainty that he would never be left behind again. What makes a family? Is it blood, or is it the conscious choice to stay when everything else falls apart? Connor and Marcus found that love doesn't always come from where we expect it. Sometimes it comes from a stranger in an alley who sees our worth when we can't see it ourselves. Have you ever experienced the life-changing power of chosen family? How has someone's unexpected kindness transformed your world? Share your thoughts below and don't forget to subscribe to Heart Stories for more real stories of hope, healing, and the families we create when we choose love over fear.